Welcome to the Town of New Canaan Town Council Town Hall meeting, regular meeting for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. We will go straight to agenda item number 1, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Tom, would you like to lead us? Yeah, on the spot.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let's have roll call.
Okay, Rita Bettito, Tom Butterworth,
Here.
Janet Fons,
Well done.
here. Luke Kaufman,
Here.
Mike Morrow,
Here.
Maria Norton,
Here.
Kimberly Norton, here. Hillary Orman,
She's here.
Christina Ross,
She's here.
Yeah,
Here.
she's been
I
marked
know.
present.
I know,
Yes.
I got it.
She's been marked present.
Eric Tunham,
Here.
Penny Young,
Here.
Jennifer Zonis. We have a quorum.
Awesome. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Agenda item number 2, public comments. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address, and comments will be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, subject to the total number of speakers. Do we have any speakers in the audience? No? Bob, anybody out in?
No one on Zoom.
Nobody loves us. All right, we'll move it along. Okay, so we will move on to our agenda item number 3, the budget review, which is a review and discussion of the proposed town budget for fiscal year 2026, including a review of the following budget and line items. We have the Board of Education obviously is here in a schedule for 90 minutes. We were going to have the Waveney Park Conservancy here today, but we're actually going to remove that and have them come at a different time. It just makes better sense given how we handle their budgetary needs. So I do have to have a formal motion to table their presentation. So can I get that motion? Luke, Kim seconds. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to the budget review for the Board of Education. I just did want to make a quick prefatory statement. Let's get right to it. A couple of things. One, on the process. Since I've taken over as chairman, I've tried to kind of streamline our budget process review, and I've said like a million times, I just think it's kind of counterproductive and unproductive to have the department heads come on in and give a presentation they've given thousands of times before. Also, our town council, I've been very, very happy this year that they did even better than last year and have paid attention, really dug deep to follow Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, had their own committee meetings here on the town council to be up to speed on these budgets when they come to us, rather than hearing it for the first time and, engaging in the cruel and unusual punishment, and especially for the Board of Ed to have to come on here with all of the C-suite staff and the actual Board of Ed members themselves. So I'm more interested in having kind of top line discussions on top line numbers and the biggest drivers, where every particular department has found, flexibility in maybe not having certain items in their budget this year. So I know the Board of Selectmen did a great job. Board of Finance really scrubbed hard. Every department, I think, has done an excellent job as they come before us on town council. I will note, I do understand last year's process. Some people were, felt it was a little less than optimal in how some of the reductions were handled. We heard you loud and clear. My personal opinion, I think it was fine, but I'm responsible and responsive to everyone in this town. So I just do want to make it clear again that, our process vests the town council with the sole authority to spend a single penny in this town. So when the budget comes to us, we certainly accord all due deference to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. But on this panel, we have extremely smart people who are dedicated and come with good faith and goodwill in looking at this budget. But other than our fixed contracts, and this is not specific to the Board of Ed, it's for every department. Other than fixed labor contracts, everything always has to be considered on the table. We all are looking at the budget line items with a very exacting eye. And like I said, we have smart people. We have lawyers, we have architects, we have business professionals, we have people from finance that are here. We have very smart people that are really looking to see, is this the best budget we can produce for the people? Like I said, Board of Finance drove down the budget a little bit more. Maybe that'll happen here, maybe it won't, but I want it to be, forward, and full disclosure. Everything is on the table except fixed contracts. So I just want everyone to be mindful of that. With that said, last kind of minute point here, I certainly want to extend a serious level of gratitude to the Board of Education and Dr. Lutzy and his entire crew. You guys really, again, knocked it out of the park. Another year in a row, have a fantastic first place designation in the state, which is just, it's amazing. It's amazing it speaks to your competency, your effort, your diligence, the structures and systems you've set up in place, the quality of the teaching staff and everyone on down the line. And it's a real crown jewel, I think, for the state of Connecticut's public school system. And you're all entitled to every bit of gratitude from all of us. And I do want to say that. And Dr. Lutzy in particular, he's got an extraordinary portfolio. If anything, he's probably an honorary lawyer at this point, given the amount of laws that have to be complied with. And I truly mean that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But I do want to say that. And I recognize, the massive responsibility that rests upon his shoulders. With all that, and again, with me, if anyone who knows me, I always want to lead with what I think is awesome, but that also, like every other department head and every other department, no one is above the law, so to speak. Everyone gets looked at. Everybody is subject to scrutiny. Dr. Lutzy, like every other department head, and I use this phrase all the time, puts the helmet on, the gloves on, and comes ready to stand and advocate for their budget. They're not wilting, flowers by any step of the imagination. So we have to deliver the best product for the people of this town. And I know everyone here is coming in good faith. I really, truly don't see anyone saying, oh, I'm going to nail them. That just doesn't exist. I just haven't seen it. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lutzy. And I had sent a communication that I was hoping to get more of a top line abbreviated presentation so we can just get to the many questions that the town council has, and also to get you guys out of here a lot earlier than in previous years. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Lutzy.
Just about.
Hi, it's been a little while. Not much to say. Just want to say thank you for everything that you guys do for the town. A lot of smart people, as you said up there. I love what we've been doing at the Board of Ed. I love what our administration, Dr. Lutz, has been doing. I've been doing this as my 4th year now, and we all came into this board kind of as a newbie. I really didn't know what to expect. You hear a lot of things in the town, and everything that a lot of things that I thought, frankly, that we were going to uncover, so to speak, when we came out of the Board of Ed. Frankly, I didn't find. What I did find, as I mentioned before, is a well-oiled machine, and administration and leadership and a team that really focuses on delivering the absolute best possible results for our students, our parents, and our town. And it is the crown jewel of this town and why people move here. So certainly appreciate what you guys do in making sure that it is the most buttoned up ultimately for the town. And just, want to keep that into consideration as you guys, as we deliberate tonight. We've presented this a few times already, and it's hard for me to ask Dr. Lutzy to abbreviate it because it's a lot of hard work that goes into it. And we've got a lot of slides and pictures of really happy parents, kids, and really successful things. But I think, Mike and I talked the other day, and we know you guys have done your research, and you've watched a few of these before. So we're going to try and spare everybody time and really get into it. So would we shorten it from like 4 hours to like two and a half? What do we got? 3 hours tonight?
Perfect. That's what I was hoping for.
So we'll get everybody out here by midnight, but it just, thank you again.
That's great, Hugo. Thank you. And I do need to just start with a quick apology to folks from home. For some reason, the sharing on Zoom is not allowing me to go full screen. So you have the slides in front of you. That will be a guide that we can use. And fortunately, I don't spend a lot of time setting up fancy animations or anything like that. So it should work just fine. But there's always a trick in presenting through Zoom. So that being said, I want to start just by saying thank you. Thank you for putting the time aside. Thank you for all of the communication we've already had. I know we've had an earlier get together, little meeting conversation with some folks to cover some ground. I always look forward to coming before the town council for a couple of reasons. One, I think we have great, engaged, thoughtful conversation. And two, it means we've already gone before the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance. So we are, rounding third, but I know it's a long run. So we're ready for it. I'm here with my amazing team, and I'll introduce them briefly, and all the folks in the back. And we wanted to come out tonight to be with you both because we all work so hard on putting this together, and also because we know it's a sacrifice we ask you to make being here learning about this. And they're the experts in their areas. The folks sitting next to me and behind me are some of the foremost experts, not just in Connecticut, but beyond. And we're incredibly fortunate to have them with us. Let's see if I can make this work. All right. So I want to start also by saying thank you to the Board of Education. Many members are here with us tonight. Similar to you, we have a 9-member Board of Education, volunteer. You wouldn't know it from the work and the effort that they put in. They really have been working with this budget directly since January, but even before that, back in December, where we have our budget workshop. We talk about concepts and ideas and get their feedback. And Hugo, to my left here, Phil is our vice chair behind me. Erica is our secretary behind me. I saw Lara Kelly there, and Matt Campbell as well. And really just want to say thank you to all of them for coming out. We had a meeting last night. We tried to keep it short, both because we had a meeting tonight because it was St. Patrick's Day. It's really obviously shows their support in being here 2 nights in a row, being out. Of course, our district administrators, I'm proud superintendent here of New Canaan, and my 11th budget conversation that we've had together with me and the town council as we thought about how best to resource our schools. And sitting to my right here is Sean O'Keefe. He's our Director of Finance and Operations. Next to Sean is Dr. Jill Carenti, our Deputy Superintendent. And next to Jill is Darlene Pianca, who is our Director of Human Resources. And to my left, next to Hugo, is Bill Tesber, our Assistant Superintendent for Pupil, Personnel, and Family Services, i.e. special ed and everything else that comes with it. This is the cabinet, right? When we talk about the cabinet, this is what we're talking about. And just the combined experience in New Canaan alone approaches 75 years amongst the members of the cabinet here. And more than that, and I won't embarrass anyone if we aggregate all of our experience overall, and we're able to bring all of that to bear on the efforts and the work that we do on a regular basis. Back behind, lined up across the table as if they're about to do something wrong, are our building administrators and district administrators as well. We have our principals there. We have some of our district administrators and others. I know I'm limited on time, so I can't introduce them all, but I will just say thank you to all of them for coming out and so continuing to work through and discuss and think about the budget and the resource plan that we have. I mentioned before the meeting schedule that we've been working our way through. So here we are in first meeting in March here with the town council. And throughout the process, I mentioned we begin in December with our budget workshop, but actually we start in October internally building our budget and working with our folks because we believe a school district budget is best built a combination of top down and bottom up. We set the direction, we set the goals, we know where the guideposts are, but we also know that the decisions about the work are best made closest to the level at which the work is done. It's a Deming thing. It's a total quality management belief, and it's something that we all believe in our work. So we always make sure that we sit with our teachers, with our leaders, with our principals, with our technologists, everyone involved to get their feedback as we're developing a resource plan. And we do it every year. We sit down with them, we schedule these meetings because we want to make sure that the resource plan that we're putting forward meets their needs so they can best serve the children in their care. So it's once we do that work leading into December, we have our budget workshop in December where we talk about concepts and ideas and vision and mission and purpose in what we do. And then we get into January, the Board of Education works through the budget, and they did very thoroughly again this year. And we had a couple of extra workshops and other opportunities for the board to interact with the budget and ask lots of questions, including a 3-hour workshop with our insurance consultant, Joe Spurgeon, who went in detail about the ins and outs of being self-insured and why we do that. And I know there's some questions about that that we'll be happy to address later. After that, in January, the Board of Education adopts the budget, makes some changes, provides some feedback, goes to the Board of Selectmen, as you know, who then looks at operating. I think they do that to humor me more than anything because they know how much I love that dimension of the work. And then we really focus on capital. And that's the Board of Selectmen's purview and lane right there. That then, as you know, goes to the Board of Finance, We were with the Board of Finance throughout February, beginning of this month, and here we are with you now. So we look forward to all of these conversations that we'll have in the weeks ahead. And I'm going to think of it as a good omen that the budget public hearing is being held on April Fool's Day. So I mentioned once or twice already that a Board of Education's budget is not a spreadsheet. It's so much more than that, right? In the budget, what we do is we work to develop a resource plan that can actualize our mission, vision, values, and goals for the school district. And to do that consistently, which I'm proud to say I feel we've done for many years, we're guided by our 5 overarching goals. Our 5 goals are not in order of preference, although the student goal is first, is to A, it's focused on student learning. B is around communication. C is around exemplary educational practice. 4 is creating an environment where all students can succeed and excel. And 5 is to be good stewards of the resources that the district and the town entrusts to all of us. Now, these 5 overarching goals may seem general, but what we do annually is work through indicators under each one that shows progress in each domain. And so in goal 1 around student learning, there may be times where we are introducing a new computer science program. So we have goals around piloting something, looking at the results of the pilot, expanding something. When the next generation science standards came out, we began revamping our high school science program and our elementary as well, and middle. So as that program was being revamped, those became indicators of progress and sub-goals under goal 1. So this keeps us moving in a consistent, aligned direction in the work that we do. And we make sure that the resources that we are putting together for this, for the town, for the Board of Education, supports our goals overall. So it provides that, really it's a true north that we use to guide our work. Now, as a result of that consistent action and the work that we've been doing, I'm going to move quickly through these because I know you've seen many of the presentations. Our students thrive and excel in all the opportunities that they're given. And we believe the opportunities that we give them is paramount to the quality of the experience that they have and what happens in their lives afterwards. So our athletic program continues to thrive. Our visual and performing arts department continues to thrive. As a matter of fact, March is Arts and Education Month. And the last couple of meetings with the Board of Education, we've had student performers. We had the chorus first meeting of the month. Last night, we had a few students performing musically. And then we even had student artwork for the board members that was produced by their children, framed, and we're able to give those out. So really celebrating the arts. Like we celebrate the athletics as well. Starting Thursday in drama, Les Mis is opening. So if you're looking for some plans this weekend, when you're not at Waveney for the scholarship drive and the ball drop, where Hugo and I will be hovering overhead, dropping golf balls. Yeah, he's still a little nervous about that. When you're not doing that, come to the high school and see Les Mis. It's an amazing production, and our students are just brilliantly talented, and they work so hard. And I really think you'll be impressed. And again, it speaks to the depth and quality of experience that we're able to give our kids. Similarly with our co-curricular and extracurricular experiences. We provide these opportunities for kids. And what we don't sit together as a bunch of adults and say, well, what club should we have? It's students who come to us and say, hey, the 4 of us want to start a beekeeping club. And then something goes out to the faculty, hey, anybody want to be an advisor for a beekeeping club? And then a teacher might write back and say, I've never kept bees before, but it sounds cool, I'll advise them. And then they'll learn together and they'll do it and they'll start a club. And that's one of hundreds of examples of how these clubs sort of originate and how they're developed and what they become. Again, it's about teaching kids to find their voice, to create and take advantage of opportunities, and to try new things. Because we know that once they leave us in high school, they're off to a world where they're going to need to be more independent. They're going to need to be advocates in their lives and for themselves and chart their own course. So we've done some amazing things as a result of this open approach to those co-curricular experiences. And we've had some that are more organized, right? Our Model UN program is a great example of really a thriving program that's gone down into the middle school, and hundreds of kids participate in this. We have our NCTV program, where the students are taking the class during the day, but then they're also working at night, filming our games, they're commentating, they're giving play-by-play of different games, different things, really providing a service for the community and learning so much. And then sometimes we have things like a baker's club where they just want to make food in our culinary program after school and then give it out, walk around. All of that's made possible in part because of the outstanding work that occurs in our classroom academically, of course. Because first and foremost, we are a high achieving school district across the board. So I do just want to share some of the results of our most recent assessments. And again, you have these slides. I apologize that it didn't let me project full screen. But as you'll see, this is ELA, English Language Arts, our most recent assessment back in 2024. And our students, the aggregate in grades 3 through 8 across the board, outperformed all other students in the state. It's the best in our DERG, which generally will put you number 1 or close to in the state. In this case, it did put us number 1. Similarly, in math assessment this past year, our Smarter Balanced assessments, our students outperformed the rest and performed top in the state and across our DRG. Again, this is the assessment that's given to students in grades 3 through 8 in math and in English Language Arts, called the Smarter Balanced. And this is the percentage of students scoring a 3 or 4. So they're meeting goal or scoring at the advanced level. Truly, it's an indicator of the work that we've been doing on our goals, right? It's about aligning the curriculum to the standards. It's about ensuring expert professional practice across the board. It's about giving students opportunities to learn and to grow and to test and find joy in the work that we're doing and to enjoy being in school. We want our schools to be places that students want to come. And that's what the athletics, the arts, the extracurricular, all of those other pieces contribute towards for those kids. And that's why they're so important. At the high school, we've had a concerted effort over the last few years to develop our AP course program options for students. Because again, we know if we create the opportunities, they'll take advantage of it. And it's up to us to thoughtfully and strategically provide a wide range of opportunities for all kids. So years ago, back in 2011, we had 18 AP courses, and they were really focused on those core classes, your AP Bio, AP Chem, AP Calc, AP US, AP English Literature, AP Language. You could guess exactly what those were. And we said we had a core of students that were performing well, but we wanted to expand the opportunity for more students to participate in college level courses while they were in high school. So we began working to develop this catalog. And as you can see, we've steadily gone from 18 in 2011 to 29 this year with our students now. And so more and more opportunities for students to take these advanced college level courses while they're still here in New Canaan at home. And as a result, the participation in the program has more than tripled, and performance has remained consistent, while our numbers of students overall at the high school has also been relatively consistent. So the gray bars in the back is our student population. The red line is the number of tests that have been administered. And you'll see again, in 2011, there was 554, 497 the year before. This past year in 2024, we had over 1,400 tests given. The number of students, we had 275 students in the AP program back in 2010-11. This past year, we had 559 individual students in that program, more than twice.
So you have almost 45% of the high school population taking an AP test in 2024.
Correct.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Correct. Yep. And really, it's even more than that because our 9th graders don't have an opportunity to. Right. So you're really talking 10, 11, 12.
10, 11, and 12.
Yep. And that's why I think this is an important graph, because many just look at the red line and the number of tests, and that's important. But really, for me, that blue line is a more powerful story, because what we wanted to do is create a program that welcomed more students to try at least one course. And so what we did was develop courses in economics, in psychology, in micro macro. We do some in art and in music. we do a wide catalog of courses so that students can find an entry point in an area of strength for them and find success in this program and build their confidence before they go off to college. And any naysayers around it prior would say that your performance is going to drop because you more than double the number of kids that are taking it. And obviously may not be that strongest score that you had. Our performance has only gone up. So I think that speaks volumes.
Ask a quick question.
Oh,
Do
by
you-
the way, fire away, ask your
Right.
questions. Go right ahead.
Do you track how many credits follow the students and actually work in their favor when they get to college?
We don't track it sort of on a database. We do ask those questions when they come back. So our students come back after their first semester to meet with, a small group meets with me and some others and the Board of Ed and counselors to talk about the experience, and we learn from them about things. So we'll get information from them anecdotally that way. Some get credit. Others are placed out of those introductory level courses. So they're able to start further down the path and they get to more advanced coursework as they're going through. It's college by college,
It would
Different.
be interesting. I know my son graduated a semester early. I mean, so that's money. That's real money. But it was a combination of the early college credit as well as the AP credit.
Right. There's also the ECE program where we align our course with a UConn or another college, and you actually
might be
get that
valuable
credit.
data to have. I mean, given the success of the programs and looking at these charts, I mean, extending that, it's like, hey, what does that mean 2 years out of high school? And
Oh, sure. We do talk about that when we talk with our students and our parents about the options that are. Years ago, it used to be pretty consistent that you'd get the credit. But then college is money in your pocket is money out of theirs. Right? So some have changed the approach a little where they'll advance you in the course sequence, but not necessarily give you the credit. So it really is case by case, college by college. But no matter what, it's an advantage for the student, both while they're here because they get that experience, and they're challenged at a college level while they're home and supported by their parents in the school versus being away. And it'll help them. It helps in applications.
knowing the
helps in-
impact of following high school might encourage even, it might have double the amount of people that are involved and excited about this. And I mean, the program obviously is extremely successful.
The average number of APs that kids take at the high school?
It ranges. There's some that take one and there's some that take, as they're in their whole way through, you might have students that take 8 or 9 APs.
Yeah, I was wondering
No, it
what the
does.
average was.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you'd have outliers that might skew that. So it more of a, distribution across.
Mhm.
We gently advise against taking too many because we
Eric
think,
just told me it's under 3. Sorry, it's
Numerically,
whispering in my ear.
it's just under 3. I mean, if you have 1,439 tests taken by 500.
By so many students. There you go.
It's around 3.
that's a snapshot of the current year, 10 through 12. So by the time they graduate,
Oh.
they may pick up a few more.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a little trickier, but yeah, I mean, we have our AP scholars and otherwise that come through as well. But no, I don't have the average on.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and there are other programs as well that provide the college level, like we said, the ECE, which is the early college experience, or our Project Lead the Way program, which is in engineering and is articulated through the University of New Haven, where students are earning college credit through the engineering program. So we've done quite a bit of work to do those articulations with a higher ed because we know that it sets a high standard for our kids. They gives them that experience and helps them as they move on. And that's feedback we receive from them every year when they come back right around the holidays. So the another outcome or another measurement that we like to look at is the college applications by our students and where they're applying. So here we see that, as you would expect, University of Connecticut received the most applications from our students last year, 32. And you see the range of schools that our students applied to. Again, this list is much, much longer than this. As a matter of fact, if I could see my notes, it would tell me the exact numbers. Let's see. So close to 3,000 transcripts for our students went to 341 colleges for 309 students. Right? Our highest enrollment was UConn with 11, Syracuse with 10. And then you look at Bucknell with 9, and I have to do it, Clemson with 4. Okay. So the academic program continues to be strong across the board, as we're looking at how do we best prepare our students and how do we best, again, meet our goals on their behalf. And that's what our budget development and resourcing, the planning and the work that we do is all about. We've had as well. And I just want to hit a couple of other quick highlights as we go, because lots of this is related to the investments that the town council approved us last year, right? So as we're going through all of this, I know I'm moving through it quickly. I'm sparing you the longer talk, but it's really about ROI. This is what is the return on the investment from the decisions that you made a year ago plus. And I think it's important to just take a moment to do that. So one of the things we've been focused on, thanks to the town council and others, is enhancing our security across all of our buildings. We now are on track for an SRO at each one of our schools every day. We've improved our cameras and our security systems. We've updated the door access controls at all of our schools. So the scan cards that we have, where we can set timers. So if one's left ajar, we know it, we close it, and take care of things that way. You'll see other physical things that are happening around, like the speed bump at the high school, which elevates a crosswalk, which makes it safer for those kids. Bollards around, and we're putting up some guardrails and other things. And there's more going on, just not for public conversation. So all of what we're doing in the school creates a real system of safety with our schools, and makes a very big difference for our students, families, and our teachers too. So, and I'm grateful for the investments that the town council has helped us to make in that regard. We've spent the year busily fulfilling mandates. We've had to do that as the year has gone on. We've had recently approved our updated teacher evaluation and professional learning plan, our leadership evaluation and professional learning plan, state approved increasing educator diversity plan.
Dr. Lutzy, let me stop you for a second. Someone texted me from TV land. The sound went out on whatever. They can't hear.
Okay.
Just give it 1 second.
Sure, take your time. That gives me a minute to try to fix this.
Isn't the sound coming from the microphone or?
I don't know.
Yeah, it is. The mic's.
Hillary said she can hear.
Hillary can hear?
Hillary can hear. We can hear.
Maybe it's on channel 79 or.
Hold on, let me
We'll ask Deanna.
go.
We're having a sound issue. I wonder if channel 79 had a problem, would we be a way of assessing that? Fair enough.
Hold on 1 more second, guys.
I'm good. I'm almost there. Let me get this done first.
Hillary. Oh,
I mean, if, yeah, like we're offering it through the website. You
Let me see if this works.
Zoom it, so the recording is providing it to public.
do you want to record?
Yeah.
Or they can stream, live stream. Like if you go to the town website, go to the town's website and go to, you go to
YouTube.
the calendar. The calendar on the front page, like tonight's meeting, and there'll be a link to this meeting for YouTube, not channel 79.
Okay, so we could stream this meeting through the website. Is that what you're telling me, or did I miss that?
That should be happening right now.
Okay,
and
so
it's
I'll
all
let,
recorded for
So we're
future-
providing what we need to provide.
Well, they can't hear me. So I can't tell them that. Someone held the sign up or something.
But we're
Bob.
meeting-
We're meeting our.
Hit a sign, hold the sign up.
It is streaming.
Stream, I'm just kidding. Or am I?
It's on the agenda. If they can go to the agenda, there's.
Oh, that's, yes.
Okay, so Dr. Lutzy, continue. Hopefully you got a little nudge there, and just in terms of your presentation.
I did.
I'm not just strutting your stuff, and it's awesome, but we have a lot of questions to get to, okay?
Understood. But that little delay gave me a chance to fix the slides. So whoever let us know, thank you for that. If you can hear me, thank you. So quickly, a couple of things we're doing, we'll get right into it and we'll get to the Q&A. We did, well, I'll explain the Q&A in a little bit. So a couple of things going on that I just think are really important because they show the commitment, the overall, the investments. We fully opened the dome. We're using it now regularly. We've got kids coming from our other schools using it. We have community members using it at times. Our clubs at the school are using it. We're talking about some partnerships with some surrounding districts, really very, very exciting things. We've gone phone free in all of our schools. Our elementary always has been. We are now using the Yonder locking pouch system at our middle school in a way that our students helped design. So the students helped us put that system in place. And all across Saks, grades 5 through 8 now, students, when they walk in, are locking up their phones. At the end of the day, they unlock them. And it's having a positive difference across the board. And the high school students are putting their phones in cubbies during their classroom period. So they're still using them in the hallways or during break. And we do, students in the high school, they're older, they're different expectations. We have an open campus. So we are talking about some other steps we can take. We've taken our largest middle school in the state and turned it into 2 smaller schools with our intermediate school and our middle school and have a design around that. Our literacy academy, which I'll speak to. And you see some of the other things here as well. I will keep moving because I would keep going. Let's see. There we go. So with all of this, and again, you see it right there, I'll be quick here, but just want to make sure you are also aware of the fact that the investments that we make by comparison place us at the bottom of our DERG, and 42 schools across the state expend more per pupil in their operational costs than we do. And I'm confident putting this forward because these are the numbers that are used by the state to determine the amount for the excess cost, grant reimbursement, and other things that they determine. So you see the differences here. And if, you can do the math, right? If Darienne's about $1,000 more per student. We have 4,000 students. So it's about a $4 million difference in the budget year to year if we were to be level at their spending, and you can go up and see the differences there. But I think it speaks to our focus and goal 5 on stewardship. Now, some of the things that we've been able to do, I don't know if any of you are paying less today than you did 10 years ago for your utilities at home, but we've been able to do that at our schools with 1 million square feet. We've been able to do it through renewable resources. We've been able to do it through especially the solar, natural gas, through our lighting retrofit program, where we took incandescent lights and turned them into LEDs. We put timers on them, all very thoughtful and purposeful in order to trend down that cost. With our fuel costs, the move from diesel to propane has yielded great benefits for us. As a matter of fact, we added buses, as you know, with the change in school start times, and we're still spending significantly less than any year when we were burning diesel with fewer buses. So we've been able to save money there. As a matter of fact, we've negotiated $1.19.5 per gallon
Down from one
for propane for our buses for driving. And then we found a rebate program for clean energy that gives us another 60 cents back per gallon. So we're spending
69
about 69 cents per gallon for our propane now as we're running our buses, which are clean, which are quiet, which start regardless of the temperature. So we've talked about the Literacy Academy and the great success we've had there. So there are questions about, do we evaluate our programs and how do we? And Literacy Academy is a great example of how we start with a pilot, test it, and grow it. Similarly, we look at some of the other programs we've had, like our downtown campus or our launch program for our transition students, Literacy Academy, some other work we're doing. This chart shows the blue is our district outplacements. And those are students that we don't have the program for, whether it's physical need, emotional need, other needs that they have that we can't meet those needs here in school. So we agree with the family and we find out the right placement for them. But our unilateral placements often are where parents don't think we have a program, we believe we do. And you can see the numbers trending down because of the programs that we're developing here in-house. And there's an awful lot to be proud of there. As a result, in part of stewardship, leadership, and the work that's going on, you can see here the total expenditures in our special education program. Just starting and working across, this again is our DERG. It is 19.82% of our expenditures goes into special education. And that is, it's a wide net when you think about special ed, but you see the comparison districts there. In 23-24, a little over $21 million was spent here in New Canaan. Again, you see the comparison data from our DERG districts. And then the prevalence rates is something that's very important that we keep a close eye on, which is a percentage of students in the population that are identified as special education. And this in part speaks to the great work that Dr. Krenti and our curriculum specialists and others do around RTI, which is intervention between when a student starts to struggle and when they are identified for special education. There are opportunities to remediate and intervene before they become special education and when they need all those services. So we invest there as well because we think it's better for students to be caught up, to get that intervention when they start struggling and not allow it to go on any longer than it has to, so that we can get them back on track and not have them in the special education program. And that has helped quite a bit. And again, you see the prevalence rates on those 2 years there. And in our DERG, we are the lowest percentage overall, as you see. We have the lowest prevalence rates, both of those 2 years that are reported here. So again, that's what these programs are about. We talk about staffing, and you want to talk about staffing. Part of staffing is building these programs that keep our kids in district, and it drives our overall costs down. And again, you see, though, you saw that chart before on those unilateral placements. And while the numbers are still going up a little bit in the budget, the total number of kids that are in those placements is trending downward, in part because of these programs that we're developing and focusing on internally. Okay. And there was a question in the packet as well about actual versus budget going back 5 or 10 years. The Board of Finance asked a similar question. I wanted to put this in here very quickly. Because as you know, we have our budget, whatever it's approved to be, and we go through and we expend that budget. We manage it as we go through the course of the year. There are certainly some districts that probably work hard to spend every dollar. We don't. That's part of goal 5. Again, that's stewardship. We work very hard to be good stewards, and in the hope that there's some funding remaining at the end of the year that can be turned back. And you can see over the last 10 years, all but 1 year, we were able to turn back a significant portion of the money. Specific, if you look at this, you see a couple of outliers, right? 1920, of course, is an outlier because that was the COVID year that school closed on March 11th. And we were virtual for the rest of that year. And then in 2021, we weren't running our athletic program or other programs in the same ways because of COVID. But if you control for some of those variables, you'll see that on average over these years, it's about $600,000, $650,000 that we're able to turn back at the end of the year. And we're always proud to do that because I think, again, it's an example of good stewardship throughout the year, and it's something that we focus on. As a result of all of this and much, much more that I didn't talk about, we just reminding you, we recently received some great accolades from Niche and from other external groups. You see the statewide recognition we've been talking about, and I think the national recognition is worth mentioning as well, to be considered the 30th district out of over 10,500 districts nationwide. 24th out of over 11,000 districts with the best teachers, and 36th with the best places to teach. You know, as all of what we're talking about and the investments, what we're doing is creating the conditions for our teachers to really excel with their kids and do a great job with the community's kids. And what this tells me is we're doing that, we're investing in the right ways and creating a great place to teach. And similar to increasing the opportunities in AP, it tells me those teachers are taking advantage of those conditions and living up to those investments and making the most of them. And I did think it was really a feather in Jay's cap to show that we were also nationally ranked the 18th best school districts for student athletes in the country out of close to 10,000 districts. So again, strength of program across the board. So we get into the budget itself as we think about 25, 26, and we have been thinking about it for quite some time. We'll go through some of the numbers now and some of the initiatives that are in there. The budget does look to balance a continued investment and continuous improvement and recognition of the investment the community is making and our value of stewardship. as we're doing this. We are looking to continue to invest in high leverage continuous improvement initiatives that have proven results. And we've seen those results and we can talk about those. We're continuing to provide for the security across all of our buildings. Our community, the boards, Board of Ed and others all have expressed that as a primary value, the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy, so to speak. And we want to make sure we're focusing our resources on the areas of greatest impact for kids. So as we look at it, this is the Board of Education's proposed budget. Sean will go through things a little bit in a minute or two, where he can talk about the changes from the Board of Finance and those adjustments. I know there were a couple of questions about that too. And I know everybody here has been paying very close attention to that. You see, we use the projected numbers because we realize that our budget is developed 18 months or more before we're talking about it now. So what we do is mid-year, we always look at each line and we reforecast and project where we anticipate that line will end. And we think that gives us a much more accurate starting point for the conversation. We don't want to ever budget to budget. That just doesn't seem right. So we do our best to make it as close to actual as we anticipate it being, given the experiences that we've had. And of course, the biggest driver here is going to be our salaries and benefits, right? So when you look at a budget, a school district budget, it's about 82% is your salaries and benefits line. Education is a people business. From the minute kids get on the bus in the morning to when they get off, when they walk through the doors, walking through the hallways, go to their classroom, go to lunch, go to recess, at the end of the day, wherever students go, they're surrounded by adults that are caring for them and supervising them. It is a people intensive business. And through the years, those responsibilities have only increased.
Brian, we got spoiled for a number of years. There were, aside from salary and benefits, there were typically 1 or 2 or 3 lines where we actually, found tremendous synergies, and we'd come in, at a negative number. I guess the hard work that drove those discoveries is, we tapped it, I guess.
Well, we certainly picked all the fruit we could find.
Yeah,
But,
right.
but I think inflation also plays a role here.
Right.
So for a budget that's created as far in advance as a school district is, inflation becomes a bit of a lagging impact. So we had to make do and figure things out and whatever, but we're also being responsive in this budget to inflation that might have hit eight months ago, right? Because we have to still continue to catch up. So I think that's a part of it. When you drill into it, you will see there are some lines that we were able to trend downward a little bit. Or there's some that maybe trade off, like we're hosting the Turkey Bowl this year. So our athletic costs will look a little bit higher because those costs are higher, but we bring in more in revenue. So if on balance, on net, we're ahead, but it looks like we're up a little bit because of that. So there's some of those little intricacies to it too. But yeah, we go through this with a fine tooth comb as much as we can.
Brian, let me just jump in here. I see the rest of your presentation. I think what maybe we can do here, and I can just tell you as an attorney, I'm stuck with page limits all the time. I have appellate judges with a big clock that's ticking down as I'm talking. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this last thing or else my client's going to get, blown out here. I get where you're at. I can see the pressure on your face. It's okay. We have really watched all of the other presentations. We are super prepped up. Nevertheless, I think there's a way we can kind of integrate your remaining slides with some of our questions, because I know a lot of it probably gravitates towards the headcount issue.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about that, and we can touch base on your capital. So again, it's no ways to disrespect you at all. We love the work and having the platform to explain how great things are.
Just don't pull back my honorary lawyer degree.
Have it. We're hiring. I'm hiring. If Brian, you want to come on in? I'll hire at a partner level too. So,
only if it's helpful. We did take a swing at answering as many of the questions as we could.
yes.
Between everything else and getting it done. We get a good chunk done.
Yeah.
I have a hard copy of those we were able to respond to. If I could share that, and then we could talk about, hopefully that's not why they're losing their contact. Talk about whichever ones the council feels.
Yeah, I
Let's talk
think
about it.
probably the most efficient way to use this, because I really just don't want us here past 9 o'clock. So I'll let you have a little bit more time than I had anticipated, because it's important for everyone to hear. And I know you wanted to get your point across, but if you have answers in writing, you want to give it to us, that's fine. I think we have, many of our members have their questions maybe that were in writing that I think for the benefit of the public, it would be good if, members would ask some of these questions now. And if we could kind of focus a little bit more on, I mean, I guess, I know it's a subjective term, your top line issues, whether it be headcount, whether it be benefits. Why don't we handle it that way? Because, again, I see your slide presentation. I think it was a really good way to integrate and be a little bit more efficient here. So,
Let's get the hard
Great
copy.
suggestion.
good. Thanks. Yeah, we'll get the hard copy and we'll get the show on the road. This way we could be a little bit ahead of it than we've been in years past. But then we can just kind of get into the meat and potatoes of whatever's on inquiring minds.
Nice, we had it last night, so we can
Need
read
one.
it.
Hey, Bill.
At least we're gonna have it. We all know what our questions are, so we can ask the questions that were posed in,
Great point.
thanks, brother. I'll just kind of kick it off just more in a theoretical question.
Very
And I
cool,
probably have
Bill.
asked this and formulated in a different way in years past. The head count is an issue, right? So you have outcomes, consistent increasing outcomes every year. That's undeniable and that's a data point. So the question, I think it's a perennial question is, is it just throw money at as much headcount as you can get because the proof is in the pudding? We have X amount of headcount and we have, a student body headcount that is a little bit of a divergent kind of in the chart as we look at things. So I think a lot of questions or the question a lot of people ask is, is there no amount of headcount we would stop at? And, there's a massive cost associated. So what is your general sense of that? And there's a kind of a sub question there because, when we talk about our comparators in other towns and headcount, right? I could be wrong, but I generally sense that at times it's a little selective in using our comparators, right? So, well, it's Darien, they do things their way, so it's a little bit of apples and oranges. But we're the top in our dirt, so there actually are an apt comparator. And to me, there seems to be a little bit of misalignment. I could be wrong, but they either are a comparator or they are not a comparator across all scenarios. So when I see other towns maybe have reduced a little bit of headcount, are they not an apt comparator anymore? So those are the kind of my general theoretical questions, which to me informs a lot of your labor force formulation in terms of headcount. So if you'd care to comment on that.
Sure. Well, as 82% of the budget overall, it is something we take a very close look at every year. There were some questions about, do we ever audit our staffing and headcount and things? And we do perform an annual audit of every single person that works for us. It's the staff utilization reports. And I think you get them, and if you don't, we certainly can share them with you. But we do this every single year, which is great because it gives us a snapshot of where we are, and we have the historical look as well. And in the Q&A packet that you just got, you'll see some of the data there comes from those enrollment and utilization reports that we develop annually. The programs that we have generally start small scale, and some of them die on the vine. Some of them we try something and it doesn't have the impact we want, and it doesn't go forward, and we pivot to something else. And we have examples of that. The ones we are always talking about, of course, are the ones that succeed, because those are the ones we want to resource and as we want to continue things forward. As far as the comparison piece goes, there's always a baseline comparison you can make, because a series of decisions drive where you are, right? I think that we are doing as well as we are financially around utilities, around propane, and transportation, around other things, because of decisions we didn't make last year necessarily, but we've made over the last 7-8 years. And similarly with staffing and other things, these are longer term decisions. We did make a decision about 8 years ago, give or take, to really focus on insourcing our operations where it made sense and was economic and appropriate. A good example of that is in our custodial unit, we now have experts in plumbing, in HVAC, in carpentry, and other things that we used to have to outsource in order to bring in that expertise to fix these things. Now we have those folks on staff. Years ago, predating me, we just made the decision to be a self-op for our food service, right? So where most other places, they might have have a manager that works for them, but then the rest of the folks work for a food service company. Right. They all work for us. They work for the New Canaan Board of Education, right? So that's where, and the same goes with our transportation system, the white vans that you see driving around, where there aren't many districts that have a system like what we have here. So that when you just do aggregate headcount, that's going to change your numbers. That's going to be your apples to oranges comparison, right? When you look at your staffing levels, for us, those levels are primarily driven by our enrollment and our class size guidelines, right? And we had traditionally worked hard to try to be in the elementary grades 18 or higher. It's a 16 to 20 range for grades K through 3. Post-pandemic, we brought those numbers down a little bit, and we still feel like it's important to keep them reasonable. And that's where that one slide that I just had up on those class sizes, you'll see some are 17.8, some are 18.2, 18.4, which doesn't mean they're 17.8. It means some classes have 17, most of them have 18, right? So when you see an 18 point something, you're having 18 or 19 in a classroom across the board, and we do that. That decision was made strategically because of the interruption of education for those kids when they were youngest. So we worked to do that in the elementary. Again, apples and oranges, the insourcing of our programs does matter, right? So the special ed costs, I think, are a great example. There's a question here about that. And we tried to answer we looked at a neighboring district where again, you saw that graph. So our numbers are declining, although the costs are going up a little bit. We're increasing about 4% in our out of district placement costs. That's below the typical tuition raises increase of about 6% per year, right? So we're able to beat that trend a little bit. A neighboring district of ours is going up over 20% to the tune of over $1.5 million just in the outplacement line, right? So the investments that we're making now pay off down the line. Part of this is, and some will remember, the conversation we had around the alternative school, right? And the long conversation about where it's going to be and are we going to do this? That alone it's offsetting some costs, right? So it's headcount matters, but I do think the aggregate spend matters too. And to be a good steward, I think in part it's about the quality of the experience for the kids that are involved, and of course the efficiency with the money. And we all believe very strongly that students are best educated in their public school, in their community, with their neighbors and friends side by side. We want them to be here whenever they can. And there's some that can, a small group, but wherever we can, we want them to be here. We feel strongly that's part of our mission and our charge. So sometimes you have to increase headcount to do that. But when we look at our per pupil costs, there are 42 districts in Connecticut that spend less per pupil than we do, and not a single one of them gets better results. So I think that means something.
Right. So it's not that, I don't want to say it in a way that seems kind of too brusque, but it didn't seem like I heard an answer that there's no amount of headcount you wouldn't continue to add with the pupil headcount remaining kind of within the range it's been, say, in the last 10 to 20 years. Because, and the Board of Finance raised this issue, and Todd Lavieri raised it the other night to us. Over the next 10 years, we'll spend, what did he say? $1.5 billion on our school district, right? And some former luminary in town said to me years ago, what other industry do you think New Canaan has? That's what they said to me, right? And it always stuck with me, and that's why I'm sharing it now. So, and I'm saying more of like a Socratic method, right? Is the town prepared to spend about $1.5 billion over the next 10 years? And some people will say, yeah, why wouldn't we? There's no other industry. It's why people move here. Like, are you crazy? Like, why would we not spend that? But I also would say, I don't think it's as easy as that's too kind of cut and dry, that question. It doesn't really work that way. So at some point, I think the public would say, can we arrest the amount of labor headcount where the band of student headcount is kind of, there's minor fluctuations, but it's diverging. right? And we have 1.5 billion that the town needs to spend over the next 10 years. That's a huge chunk of money. And that's why it's probably at least in my estimation, the biggest concern of people who are watching any of the budget. Because what Lavieri said, 70% of our budget this year is driven by the Board of Ed. I think that was the number, right? So it's a fair question to ask, and you're the person to ask. So I really would like to know specifically, is there no amount of headcount on the labor side that you wouldn't throw at the school district over the next 10 years? Would you stop it at some point if we're within the band of the pupil headcount? Like, what is your?
I think I'd answer by saying that
There's not.
every dollar we spend, right, every position we have is accounted for and held accountable in the work. That we do have very high standards for folks that are here. That we are pretty judicious, I believe. We are judicious in what we ask for, where we don't come forward with a laundry list of things, and we try to do things over time. Meaning the Literacy Academy took 3 years to get into place. We didn't come forward with here's a package of for X amount of dollars. We want proving the concept. The primary driver of our enrollment is of our staffing is our enrollment. So the numbers, as the numbers stay consistent, the number of classroom sections that we have would be consistent, certainly. Needs to emerge though, right? So if needs emerge, and unfortunately they rarely fade away, right? They do sometimes. And so, for instances, we used to have school counselors at our elementary schools. And we made the strategic decision that there's more value added in those at that level with social workers instead of a guidance counselor, because they can do what counselors do plus. So we made that transition. So we rolled those positions over. And I think you see that with our district more than most. For instance, is the Director of Innovation position was actually our K-8 science coordinator position that rolled into the Director of Innovation position, kept all of the responsibilities of the K-8 science, but also picked up additional responsibilities for evaluation K-12 across the board. So we do work hard to do that. I can tell you that if you said today, we're going to give you 10 more positions, I would urge you not to, because it goes against what we believe and how we approach this. We take pride in being good stewards and be careful with this. Ask, because we know the investment that we're asking you to make. And it is why, I mean, I know we're joking about it a little bit, but it's why I do think it's worth taking the time, and I'm grateful for the time you gave me, to talk about the results that we're getting, right? Because that's the point, ultimately. If we didn't have that story to tell, we'd be having a different conversation. Right? But I think that in the end, the approach we take is incremental and thoughtful. I can't say we're done, but I can say that if there is an additional request, I'll be able to explain it to you why very clearly, and we'll have to make that decision. I personally don't believe that throwing more at something is the answer. Never have. I think it's more important to see what you have and be as thoughtful and purposeful with it as you can, which is why we've evaluated programs and eliminated them, because they weren't having the results that we wanted. There's another sort of myth out there that once something starts, it never ends in schools. It's not true. It's not how we do it. If there are programs that aren't giving us the results we want, we evaluate them, we work with them, and we eliminate that program. So we're thoughtful about this stuff. And I don't want to give you a flip answer, because you're asking a real question.
I get it. That's your answer. I definitely understand what you're telling. I appreciate that. I don't want to monopolize my time. I'm going to go to Rita out in the TV world, and then we have a bunch of questions here. Who did I say? Hillary? Yeah, Hillary. I'm sorry. Hillary, you go, and then. Rita.
Yeah, thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think Dr. Lutzy did a nice job answering your question, Mike. And I just want to flip it a little bit in how I consider the additional headcount. I do think that it creates efficiencies. In my mind, the greatest efficiency that we've created is the Literacy Academy, where you ultimately save a ton of money in outplacements. I don't think you can, I think headcount is an easy thing to look at and to assume that any increase is inefficient or is not worth the money when, you know, I think Dr. Lutzy and the Board of Ed do a phenomenal job of maximizing the headcount that we have. And, you know, a slight increase doesn't, to me, you know, I don't think that fewer headcount automatically is a better thing or is creating, you know, perhaps we're reaching the ultimate or the optimal amount of staff and administration for the students that we have. And I do think that the proof is in the results. I think that our community overwhelmingly supports our schools. We had a very good response to the POCD survey of our town, and the schools got the highest marks out of all of the things, all of the amazing things that our town provides. And I think people are very happy with the service that they get there. I am, as a parent, I can say that. I think my kid gets incredible support at school, and I'm so grateful for it. So I just want to, you know, I do think that we need to balance the request with an idea that we're actually saving money by adding headcount in some instances. And that's the way I look at it.
Thank you. Hillary, who wants the next question?
I have some questions.
Eric, go right ahead. I'm sorry, I got to step out.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the job that you and all your team are doing. I'm a product of New Canaan Schools, and I'm very grateful for the education I got at the high school, at Saks, at East School, and way back when at Center School. So I go way back in and out of the country, but I'm a graduate of New Canaan High School. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. And I'm very pleased with the teachers who worked with me and my colleagues to get me through there and onto college and now retired. So I'm very happy. But I'm just looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at this as a layman coming in and with the materials in front of me and with what I can find online. I found that in 2015-16, the enrollment was 4,220. The staffing was 551.4 FTE, total staffing. And the budget was 83,200,000. In 25-26, according to the budget and your numbers, we will have an enrollment of 3,943, staffing of 795.8 full-time equivalents, and a budget of $114.2 million. So in 10 years, I'm seeing that enrollment is down 7%, staffing is up 44%, and budget is up 37%. The annual inflation rate over the same time has been 2.55% for cumulative inflation of 25.5. So just as a layman looking at numbers, I see enrollment flat to, well, down over 10 years, yet staffing's up over 40% and budget's up near 40%. So I don't understand the numbers. And when somebody comes to me and says, my taxes are going up this year, they've been going up every year for as long as I can remember, 2, 3, 4%, but they're going up. And the school budget continues to rise. And at current rates, if we have a 4.7% rise in the school's budget each year for the next 10 years, will be over $180 million for the school's budget in 2035. 6%, it goes up to 186 million. So this is real money. And as Todd Lavieri has said, it's $1.5 billion over the next 10 years. And his approach is there any way we can look at cutting 100 million off that or 200 million to get it down to 1.4 or 1.3? 10 years ago, we were the #2 school system in the state. Okay, now we're #1. I'm not arguing with the results. We got brilliant kids coming out of New Canaan Public Schools and going on to great colleges and careers. But I'm just looking at those numbers and having a hard time justifying it to Joe Blow taxpayer who comes up to me and says, enrollment's down 7%, budget's up 37% over 10 years. Why is that? And we've got a FTE headcount that's 240 higher than 10 years ago. So I'd like you to address those numbers if you could, please.
Sure, and I don't have all of the details from the year that you're benchmarking off of and moving forward from. I would say there are some other numbers that are also important to look at. I think one of them is the fact that there are 42 other districts in Connecticut that spend less per student than we do, right? So again, I think that that it might be,
Spend less than we do or spend more than we do?
I'm sorry, more than we do.
Spend more than we do.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's an important clarification. Thank you.
I thought so. Yes.
Thank you. And you know, part of that is structure, part of that is design and other things, but the years in question, the years you're talking about, we've been looking at the certified staff more than, and your numbers are all inclusive, right? So that would include van drivers. So if there were
It includes
more
everything
needs-
because that's what goes into the budget and the taxpayers have to fund. Yes.
Sure,
that's-
and I'm
that's
only
why I-
saying because, so my answer won't be specific to that necessarily because that
Right.
would include our campus monitors, our drivers for our vans, that would include our custodians and, you know, everything else that's those support in different ways. For our teachers, going back from 2014 to 2024, we did take a look at that. There was an increase. It was 4220 in 2014 and 4062 in 2024. Right, so not as striking as an increase as you're talking about, but there was one. Now, the data around the teachers that we had was that we have increased just under 40 teachers in that time. And when we started to drill into it, more than half of them were special ed teachers, right? So that's the literacy academy we just mentioned. That's, you know, some classroom teachers. Those are other positions. Social work, sections, things like that we've been responsive to. One of the challenges around headcount when we look at total enrollment is where is the enrollment? If it's concentrated at one school in an elementary school, we can make some shifts and we can reduce some sections and change some things, but it generally isn't. Typically, it's when a larger grade graduates and a smaller grade comes in, sometimes graduates 12th grade and smaller comes in, that sometimes will shift your enrollment a bit, or it'll be dispersed across the 3 elementaries, where we can be down 100 students, but if it's across the 5 grades in an elementary and a couple of kids in each one, you may or may not be able to reduce a section to save a position. So while on the aggregate, it looks like a big number, you can't always do anything with that depending upon where that number comes in, right? So that's a piece of it. Another piece of it is over in the middle school at Saks, we've got the grades 5, 6, and grades 7 and 8, and we have a team structure over there that's meant to flex up or down with kids so that it can be on a lower end or higher end. It's a team of 4 teachers that work together with the same group of kids so that we take a large school in a challenging time for adolescents and provide them with more support as they're going through their day, right? With English, math, science, social studies teachers. That in the years that you mentioned, we had some what are called super teams because we had some smaller teams that were moving up and it was alternating year by year. So we, instead of having 4 teams of 4, we had 3 teams of 4 and 1 team of 2. And as we looked at that and saw the outcome, we weren't happy with the results. And we went to 4 by 4, right, on the teams. Again, that can flex up as the grade levels get bigger or go down as they get smaller, but that can influence our numbers as well. The outside of the special ed, I would say that the needs of children are different today than they were 5 and 10 years ago. We've mentioned briefly the pandemic and the desire to keep those class sizes small, especially at the elementary levels. We also have more interventionists and more students, more adults doing more work with kids in more intensive ways, because that's what their needs are. And we want to provide for them and try to support them as best we can. The final thing I'll say again is the special education numbers. We've been doing a really excellent job with them, but they are going up everywhere. That's just the way it is. And with that can come the need for additional van drivers, additional aides on buses, on vans, additional support staff, whether it's teaching assistants and otherwise. And so all of that is likely contributing to the number that you have. But with that said, Eric, I'm happy to take a deeper dive and to come up with a more sort of cogent, articulate response to the question.
I get questions from friends on the street who say, you know, I looked at the budget or I saw this and I see we're up 200 plus staff in our schools over 10 years, but enrollment is down. Please explain that to me and please explain why my taxes have been going up. So I need to have some justification for that. I look through these numbers and as an example, I see at Saks, we have 2 principals, 2 assistant principals, 2 principal secretaries and a receptionist and a dean of students. I really scratch my head at trying to explain that to somebody who asks me, why are there two principals at Sax? And I know it's one for 5-6, one for 7-8. But again, we have 9, 10, and 11, 12 at the high school. We have a smaller student population at Sax than we do at the high school, or am I wrong on that
It's the
number?
same.
Pretty close. Okay.
Mhm.
So couldn't we look at that as sort of a way to maybe reduce administrative headcount and try to coalesce two principals into one principal, two assistant principals? Maybe you still need two. The high school has 3. And I don't know why we have a dean of students at Sax. So I'd love to hear an answer to that one. So those are the kind of questions that I have as I'm looking through this. And I'm looking a lot deeper than I did last year. And I'm coming up with these questions, and it's just, I look at a number and I look at something, and I gotta get an answer that I can.
No,
give
I
you.
want,
Yeah.
please, that's what we're
Yes.
here for. Ask the
Right.
questions, right? So one of the challenges at Sax with the middle school and the intermediate school is they are 75 minutes apart. So grades 7 and 8 start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and grades 5 and 6 start at 9:15. Okay, so they also end 75 minutes apart, right? So you have 2 independent schools, and you need oversight, responsibility, and work. Plus, fifth grade, especially 5th and 6th, is very different than 7th and 8th grade. They're on different schedules. They come and go at different times. The developmental need of the kids are very different. And the dean of students position actually is one of those examples of a position that we evolved from. It was the health coordinator, full-time health coordinator position, K-12, that we looked at and turned into a dean of students position in order to be more present for those kids, for those families, because of the developmental needs, the intensity of those needs in what is the largest middle school building, grades 5 through 8 in the state, with 300 plus kids per grade, right? So we try to make that smaller with our teams. We try to make it smaller with our intermediate school and our middle school. And it's the dean of students who fills that gap for both of the levels. She works across both levels on different days in order to provide the level of service that our parents and families are used to. Remembering that they're coming out of elementary school in the 4th grade and coming in, which is a smaller neighborhood school, still some of the largest schools at those levels in the area, but they're coming from their small elementary school into the largest middle school structure in the state. So we're doing all of this to try to make it smaller community for our kids and for our teachers to be able to focus on their grade levels, on their kids in their faculty meetings and at other times. But literally the difference in time between the start and end for the two, what you really can't have one principal spanning, starting in the earlier and then staying all the way through in the later. And the
conversation about that at some point, because I'd love to hear the detail on why you can't have one principal just because of a difference in start time. It's just,
sure.
I'd like to understand that more.
Be happy to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Can I just pop in real quick, just to address some of Eric's points too? Is I think that as the mother of a 6th grader, I can't even articulate the differences between a 5th and 6th grader and a 7th and 8th grader.
I'm not,
They-
Hillary, I don't
No,
doubt for a minute there are differences between a 5th and
But-
6th grader and a 7th and 8th grader.
Can I just finish?
I
Sorry, can I
understand that
finish?
completely. Yeah,
Can
go
I
ahead.
just finish? And I also think that, we talk a lot about our highest achieving kids. We talk about how, they go off to the great colleges, they play a million sports. Our school system services a lot of kids with different needs. And it's a reason people move here. And it can be incredibly expensive. And that burden is only going to get greater with what's happening on the federal level. And I promise you, if you talk to parents of kids, a drop from 1 to 2 in our school ranking, and if you talk to property owners, has a very big impact on our property values. It does. If somebody hears that Darien takes over us from 1 to 2, it really is, it can make a difference in selling your house in the real estate market and all of that. Our schools have done an amazing job of not only preparing kids for college and preparing them to go forward, but for those kids with needs and developmental disabilities, preparing them for life. And that can be costly, but to me, it's an investment completely worth making. And I think that those outcomes are important to look at too, not just the kids going to four-year colleges that come from, families that can support them because, and they're neurotypical and, it's a far different question. And I think if you were to talk to parents who move here for the special education, it would be really important and eye-opening. And that makes our community better and stronger, in my opinion.
Thank you, Hillary. Maria.
I just want to focus on the addition of the classroom coach and just clarify, right now, there's a math coach is that only at Saks? Or can you just explain the coach situation as it stands now?
Sure. Currently, we have one classroom coach and one math coach. They work across grades K up through 6. So they're in the intermediate school, but also the 3 elementary schools. And they work with all teachers across the board.
One on math strategies and curriculum, and the other one
On classroom design, on lesson planning and execution, and
so the new position is one additional full-time classroom coach to supplement
correct.
Who's there already.
Correct. And there's a graphic in your packet there, you may have seen it, so that's I think a good example of sort of incrementally phasing things in. And initially the concept was to have a coach embedded in each of the elementary schools. And we had the conversation, took a step back and said, let's prove the concept first and make sure that it has the impact that we want it to have. So we've had great success. As a matter of fact, there was 2 meetings ago, an excellent presentation to the Board of Education by our classroom coach and math coach and others that were talking specifically about, what they do, what their days are like, how they work with kids. And I would strongly urge all of you to watch that if you can. I'd be happy to send you the link if it's helpful. But we didn't want to sort of, repeat all of that, all the slides and everything that was there. But they work on a number of different levels. They work individually with teachers that either the teacher self-identifies or the coach identifies or the principal identifies. They work with grade level teams of folks that might be struggling with a concept based on the data, the student performance, and what they're looking at in the formative assessments that they're getting the results from. And they provide whole school professional learning as well, both on professional learning days and at faculty meetings and other times. So they work on a variety of different levels to amplify their impact across.
So the classroom coach is advising teachers on their professional practice. It's not
Correct.
necessarily a curriculum, because I'm just looking at, I had asked the questions about how many teachers are at each step, and in New Canaan, we hire at step 3, presumably because they have experience, or?
That's just through negotiation, and that can be anything year 1, 2, or 3. Right.
Because it looks like next year we'll have about, say, 16 teachers that are at step 6 and below. I'm just wondering, will this position attrition out? Will this be a forever coaching model? I mean, we have a pretty experienced staff, it appears on paper. Do we need a classroom coach? Because I think the salaries grow one position at a time, and that's where we are. So do we really need to add a full-time position rather than maybe use all the expertise of the staff that's been here, 20 plus and above? It starts at like, there's a lot of experience in the district.
Sure.
Can we use some of that? We have $1 million in stipends. Is there a way to use some of that money to mentor teachers until they no longer need coaching? And the second part was, doesn't the teacher evaluation process, observations, kind of handle some of that coaching?
It's through the teacher evaluation process that we can sometimes identify folks that would benefit from the coaching, right? And so there is a relationship there for sure. And actually I included in the packet that you have just one snapshot of one indicator under domain 3. And you'll see that's how thorough that document is, just as a quick example. You mentioned the numbers, in the same chart, you'll see that of 432, give or take, teachers, 122 of them, more than a third, are on the very top step. So as they retire, they'll be pretty consistent turnover as we look at that, and that's what we anticipate. And so that while somebody might be progressing out and no longer need coaching, I would anticipate that there's other folks that come in. And the coaching model itself is something that, we're not inventing this. This is happening all around us, as I'm sure you probably know. And there's a science behind the coaching, right? So we've actually been training for a couple of years and doing a lot of work in preparation for the coaching in order to make sure that it's effective and that it works. The experienced teachers will mentor their younger colleagues. I mean, we do. I did when I was more experienced. We do that, of course, in our profession, but they're also responsible for their own kids. So there's a limit to what they can do, whereas a dedicated coach can embed in that classroom, can give model lessons, give the feedback, demonstrate, and then do it together, and then observe the teacher doing it, him or herself, and then provide that feedback. Go through that entire coaching cycle, which is in the slide packet that I gave you. That's the value add, right? The mentoring, that's going to be there. The younger teachers and less experienced teachers are going to look up to our more experienced expert teachers. They're going to go there for tips or tricks, other advice, but to truly move the needle on practice, it takes coaching cycles and multiple coaching cycles. So you might go through one around a specific need, and the example in the packet is around transition times, right? So one of the things that inexperienced teachers struggle with at the elementary level is the amount of time spent in transition from one activity to another with kids. As a high school teacher, I didn't really get it until I got it, right? So to me, it was like, why is that an issue? Because they could have 40 transitions in a day. And if they're spending 90 seconds to 2 minutes more than they need to in each of these transitions, that's all wasted time. And that accumulates and adds up to hours per week of lost instructional time. So that's not something a expert mentor teacher can demonstrate and get in the classroom and do, because they're going to be teaching at the same time. They've got their own kids. So a coach, it's one specific example, but it makes a difference, right? So for those kids in that area, and this was one of the examples that they shared with us at the presentation, through that coaching, every child there now has 3.5 hours, give or take, more per week of time on task in instruction because of that coach.
I can totally appreciate the mentorship, but I'm just thinking we're number one, like how much harder do the teachers have to, like they're doing something that's working. Do we need to capture those 3.5 hours a year per child?
Well, the teachers would tell you, when I talked with Darlene and I go around, we talk to all of all new teachers and ask them what's working, what should we do more of, what should we do less of, right? What's working best for you and what maybe shouldn't we be doing? To a person, more coaching, please. So it is
So this would be
well
permanent,
received.
like ongoing. This is not one of the positions, like you were saying before, things go away. This won't ever phase out.
It was no longer having the impact that we're seeing today, then we would reevaluate and phase it out. I mean, this is the only reason we're here is because it's working, right? So if a few years from now we're looking, saying, you know what, the impact we had 3 years ago, 4 years ago is no longer there, then it's not something that, something we could phase out likely through attrition if need be, right? Because of turnover at the elementary level, so, if it's not working, then we would phase it out. And
I am worried, seeing that there's 11 teachers that were coached this year. It just doesn't seem enough to justify a full-time, but that's my opinion.
so if you look at that graphic, it's a little more than that. It's 30. So that was only the first half of the year.
And 30.
It was 30 individual teachers who went through complete coaching cycles, and the cycle's on the other set of slides. 11 in small groups, and then 11 hours of professional learning for building wide, right? So that's just this year. But if you look at last year's numbers, we had 46 teachers that were individually worked through those coaching cycles. And if you, another slide that I just think helps set the context, that's all, is our number of new elementary teachers. So this past year in 24-25, we had 54 elementary teachers that were untenured, which means they are in their first 4 years of teaching with us. Generally, there may be some that came with experience elsewhere, as you know, but generally, so that number has increased by 74% over the last 4 years, right? So it's a significant amount of new teachers. And
Is that
the
across all schools?
the 3 elementaries.
So this coach would only be elementary. Would there then be a coach needed for the other schools? For the new?
No, I don't we anticipate this would go across the elementaries, like, and be similar to the setup that we have now, which is really K-6, depending upon need. And it's not going to be, it wouldn't be scheduled to one building or one grade level, because we need to be responsive to where the needs are greatest.
Yeah, I have a question. So I had asked about the labor market. I didn't get a chance to read the answer in terms of why there's so many new teachers. I understand that's a reflection of the market and hiring and things like that. So I'm wondering if there's another way to get the coaching attention that the teachers need besides hiring a full-time employee. Could they be a contracted service? Are there simulation centers for teachers so that by the time the teacher starts the year, instead of having the kids learn how to transition faster, they're actually training in the summer or something to that effect, so that when you look at the benefits, you know, the overall budget, and you see how much the benefits cost, it's like about 1/4 at this point of the entire budget. At least that's what it looks like to me. So every time a new person gets hired, there's insurance that adds to the ISF and pension and things like that. So I'm wondering if there's a way to get what the teachers are looking for without actually adding to all those other expenses that the taxpayer has to pay for.
So I do have to tell you, your question about a simulation center sparked some entrepreneurial interest by some members of the cabinet.
Good.
We
I
are
used to work in an assessment center. So
not aware of any such thing. It is an interesting idea, and we talked it through a bit. But as far as, you know, sort of going to a place, as you described in the question, really, as we've thought about and talked about it, that's really student teaching, right? So the students that come to us, in order to be certified, they have to spend a period of time doing their student teaching. And that's where they come into a classroom that somebody else has already started and established. And then that, under the tutelage of that teacher, that master teacher, they're learning how to do it. But that can happen in any school anywhere around the country, really. So it's part of it is about what are our expectations and standards for our staff. As you can imagine, I mean, we have very high standards. We do. This is a challenging place to come in and to learn how to succeed and excel. And we do support them well. And it's important to do so. We do some of those things already, as far as like for our new teachers, we offer them a week to come in and learn the curriculum, and they do this on their own time. We have our new teacher orientation 3 or 4 days before things start in order to, again, acclimate them to the district and our systems and things. But what we find is that needs emerge. So as they're practicing, they're working with kids, they start to see their own needs and their own areas for growth, or we see them and hold up the mirror to them. And there's really, without them being with the kids and getting started and doing that work, it'd be very, very difficult to pick from a menu what they might need in advance. So there's part of this is the real-time training. And again, we've got great staff. As a matter of fact, our coaches have emerged from our existing staff, right? So these are not folks that we're hiring away from other districts to come here and coach our staff. These are people who have established themselves as master teachers here in New Canaan. So they're teaching them pedagogy and they're teaching them the New Canaan way at the same time.
yeah, I understand that. And I think dovetailing on Mike's questions, I just think it would be helpful to start to think of another model to get the needs addressed that doesn't add to the benefits and the insurance and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So if the need is there, contract out or have people come in and work for 15 hours a week or whatever is needed. Because I do think that as time goes on and the budget gets bigger, we need to start to think in a more entrepreneurial way, perhaps, about how to keep those insurance costs and other benefits and pension costs down, because that's getting bigger and bigger as the budget gets larger.
We're certainly open for the conversation and the consideration for sure.
Yeah.
You know, we're always careful because we do insource most of our core functions because we have higher standards than most. Right? But definitely we're open for that conversation.
Sorry, Rita, I want to try to work everybody in first. So Go ahead, Rita.
Hey there. I just want to echo what everyone else said about the school system. My son has gone through middle school and high school, and I can't say enough about the school. So I'm very respectful of everything that Dr. Lutzy, you have done and the board and everything to keep it at the level it's at. I actually did watch, I watched the, I sent a link actually out to the town council regarding the classroom coach and the math coach. And I was really impressed. Like it was very eye-opening as to what those coaches can do. And frankly, your rationale for having, two principals instead of one, that makes, I don't feel like I am qualified to even question some of these decisions. Like I can sit here, I can like point at different things and say, what about this? What about that? At the end of the day, I think, you know best on what is the priority. I think what we're just struggling with, right, is not that any of these positions don't make sense. I think people are just struggling with that number that just keeps like increasing. And is there a way? And I think it's really just an earnest question. Is there a way to get most of the benefit? Is there a way to think about it creatively with maybe a little less of the cost? And so, again, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but, can you look at can you look at headcount a little differently, or can you look at your budget a little differently to get the most benefit that you can, but maybe at a slightly less cost? I think that's really what we're asking. Like, is there a way to do that? Because frankly, like I said, I don't really question any of the decisions or any of the positions specifically. But I think our question is, if we can't keep this pace up, is there a way we can think of it differently? That's really the question in my mind.
Well, I think that it's one of our primary responsibilities to always try to think in many different ways as we can, right? So, there are creative models being tested in different parts of the country. There's a 4-day school week in Colorado, Arizona. There's about 1,500 school districts around the country that are running a 4-day school week. There are, you're shaking your head, I know, but I'm just, if you want me to think differently, there's different things. You can
A lot of things happen in
shave around the
Colorado
edges.
we don't necessarily want here.
Well, yeah, no, I meant more. I mean,
don't ask me to think differently, but
yeah.
in your way, right? I mean, this is what we have to do, right? But I guess I put on the table to say, we do look at everything. We do try to have these conversations about, what's better, where can we save? And I think, again, we show it in some ways, right? We don't work hard to spend every penny. We work hard to try to save every penny, and that's the turn back piece. But that was an extreme example. I was going extreme. There are other things going on in Arizona, right? With Arizona State University, ASU, where they're piloting and testing more team teaching model and approaches, the elementary levels and others, where instead of one teacher, one group of kids, you've got, say, 3 teachers with more kids. And then you don't need, if one's going to be out, you don't need substitute teachers, and you can save money again around we spend $1 million, give or take, on subs every year. So there's other things that we're paying close attention to and things that we're thinking about and talking about. What I always worry about is the death by 1,000 cuts, right? So I think it's important that we maintain the value proposition of the school district that we have, which is that quality of the experience for each child, which I think we deliver very well. But we do think about this year, and we think about what opportunities might present themselves 3 years out, as we consider where we are and where we're going. So we're always open for new ideas, to consider them, not necessarily do them, but to learn from them and see what we can take away. Again, we could reduce headcount pretty quickly by contracting out for our vans. So we'll stop. We're one of the few districts that do what we do. We've got 30 drivers, give or take. We've got, say, 10 aides, and we've got our vans that we have to put in the budget every year. But we will pay more for transportation by doing that, right? Well, each student costs about $125,000 from a third party to drive to a location. And so we'll double 2.5 times our costs in doing that. Like those, so we think about it, we talk about it, and we make that value judgment that we save money and we provide better service by doing what we do, but it's more headcount. So I think we've got to be a little careful about, I understand why it's important and we're very thoughtful about it, but it's not all, right? And that total dollar amount per student is a part. I mean, there's at least one indicator that that the decisions we're making are reflective of good stewards of the investment that we're making.
I'm sorry.
I just had one more minor question, and then all the bunch of the others, I'll sit down with you or a member of your
Would love to.
cabinet, and we'll go through them, and I'll understand things. First, I want to say, I agree with Hillary, I agree with Rita. I do not question for 1 minute the results that have been achieved by our schools, and I'm proud to be a product of New Canaan schools. And please forgive me if I've come across in any way as combative in my questioning. What I'm doing is looking at this, like I said, as a layman, and just trying to understand what this is, what that is, get an education, because if I don't understand what's behind the numbers, I can't defend them if I vote for them. So that's what I'm doing. The last little question I have is, what is a campus monitor? Specifically, what does a campus monitor do, and why do we need 11 of them?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
And I look forward to sitting together and going
Good.
through all the details, and I'll buy lunch. We'll enjoy it.
No, it'd be separate checks. It's
Yeah.
a matter of principle. We do
Oh, no,
that. Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
a salad from our food service.
There you go.
But so our campus monitors are essentially, they are employed by the district. I don't want to call them our security guards, but in essence, that's what they are. We've got one for each of our elementary schools, and they are the first person that anyone coming or leaving that building sees. They have cameras all throughout the building that are at their desk, and they control the buzzer. So they control access in or out of our buildings at the elementary level, and at Saks, they do the same thing. Now we have 3 at Saks, because again, the size of the building and the start and end times and everything else. And we've got 2 entrances and exits, front and back, and then a third to walk around the building and keep safe. We have 3 at the high school because that's an open campus, right? And then, so that's what, 3, that's 9. We also have a floater who's a substitute, because when there's an absence there, it has to be covered, right? So we have to have somebody there. And then we have a lead campus monitor who manages the training and also fills in when need be, when people are out or in training or anything else. But they're our security team, for want of a better term, for our school district. They are primarily retired police officers. They're not armed, but they do manage the flow and the access into the building. And the way our system is designed, we protect the envelope of the building across the board. So every door is locked, and they control the access to the main door.
So I've got a left brain and a right brain kind of thing to say. Whichever is the intellectual part of that, I can't remember which. It seems to me in prior years you had a different, maybe I would argue more effective portrayal of what a staffing model would look like on a normalized basis. So to include what you just said with the van drivers and everything, but if you went methodically down for the whole workforce and you said, you know, had we made this different decision, it would be this different headcount. And it seems to me what I recall is that when you go through that methodically and you look at all the variables, it actually looked like we haven't really added, other than mandated things or things that to achieve efficiency or safety, you know, we really haven't grown that much in the past 10 years. So I'd like to see a better chart. But the other side of my brain, so I had kids go through the school system in the 80s and early 90s, and it seems to me that I couldn't begin to compare what life was like in that era versus what it's like today, what it's like to be a teacher, what it's like to be a student, the trends that are going on in our society, the role of parents. I mean, there are 50,000 variables in what makes our schools great right now. And a lot of them didn't even exist when my kids were going to school. I mean, the first child that I sent to St. Luke's, because she was a wallflower at New Canaan High School and just wasn't getting much out of it. I don't know how her performance may have affected the ranking of the school in those years, but you know, it just didn't cut it. I don't care if they were number one or number two or number three. I ended up sending 4 kids to St. Luke's because the schools weren't working for me then. But today, none of my kids would be going to St. Luke's. You know, it's a different frigging world. And you know, do you agree with that? I mean, can you put more color around that? I mean, we're trying to keep up with a speeding train socially here.
Oh, yeah.
And innovating on the fly every second. And I don't see that reflected in all these questions about X dollar and Y headcount and this and Y. It doesn't reflect the reality of the world.
The way we like to frame it, the way I like to frame it is just the understanding that the world's moving faster today than it's ever moved before. And it's the slowest it will ever move again. So you're right. Like, so in that sort of, in that pace of a world and that pace of change, how do you create an oasis, almost a system that can really focus on the things that it values most? That's why we start with a conversation about our goals, our goals for children, our mission, vision, values, and goals, because that's our job, to create that space where we shut out all of those other things and we make sure every child knows that they're welcome, that they're cared for, they're loved in that school, and they can be successful there. And it's a hard challenge, but it's what we do our best to succeed at, because we're doing the most important work on the planet, as you know. I think a good example, Tom, I'll go right back to what Eric was asking about those campus monitors. 10 years ago, we didn't have what we have now. We didn't need it because of the way things change. We need it now. There's just no question. There are other examples of that too. I mean, just look at investments in cybersecurity and other things that we now have to do that we couldn't have imagined having to do 15 years ago. It's just the nature of the world that we're living in. We need to be responsive to students' lives outside of school. That's the initiative around the cell phones and the student mental health and the social media and information management and being discerning consumers of the information that they're presenting with, so they know where the truth lies. It's hard, but we're focused on doing this, and I think we're doing it better than anybody, and I think we can do it even better.
I think there's no question. I don't know if like looking back 20 years ago, saying how kids were raised back then, comparing it to today has much relevance as to what we're doing here tonight and on a go forward. But I think that what you put together, having in my 4th year here, is tremendous and remarkable. I don't think we need to do a 20-year look back as to what things were back then. I think that it changes so frequently, and it's so fluid and active that you've assembled. You said the word cabinet. I'm proud. I'm proud that you said that. And it's like, yes, you have. You have a cabinet around you that supports, and look at the results, right? So I think it's fantastic. I think people's positioning here is looking at, like, is this appropriate that we went up 40% with headcount based on student of this? We're living in fluid times, right? So we have to adhere to that. We have to be knowledgeable of that, and we have to react, because you know what? If you don't evolve, you're the dinosaurs, you die off. So I think you've all have done an excellent job. And I think it's going to be more fluid and more change. It's going to happen. You just said it, it's going to happen faster. And I think that this school district, the Board of Education, has done an unbelievable job as to reacting to what today's environment is. And I'm proud to be sitting up here and saying, you guys do an excellent job. Doesn't mean that we don't need to sharpen a pencil or look at certain things and, further have discussions, but definitely proud of what we're presenting here today.
Who's next?
Question.
Yes, please.
Can you speak a little about the math interventionists at the high school? Can you address, is there a need that's not being met right now? Is it because more students are going to STEM? Is it, what exactly?
Sure.
Does it mirror the Writing Center as well?
In some ways, it does. So yeah, there were some questions. I think we answered a couple of them in the packet there. It is addressing a need. And so one of the things, it's addressing several needs actually. And again, there's one of the slides in the packet you'll see sort of breaking it down, but at a high level, a trend that we've seen over the last couple of years is that more students are doubling up on math in the lower grades. It used to be something that happened in the upper grades where students were strong in math and they wanted to take AP Calc and statistics, right, before going off to college, and you had those students that were stronger in math. Now what we're seeing more and more are students who maybe are emerging a little bit later in their math proficiency that as they come through, so they're not on that calculus track as they come out of the middle school, but they want to get onto it. So they're doubling up their courses when they get into the high school. And it started as a couple. Now it's about 40 students, give or take, each year over the last 2 years that have been doing that. So we're seeing that emerging need. Those students, as they're doubling up in their math, they need some additional support. So that's one of the areas that this person would be working with, helping some of those students that are trying to double up on, typically it'll be geometry and algebra 2. And be able to help there. Another thing this person would be able to do is push into classrooms. So working with teachers, if they've got a couple of kids in the room that are struggling with a concept or an area, they can schedule for this interventionist to come in and work with a small group within that classroom so the teacher can continue doing what they're doing and work to remediate that group and catch them right back up. And that's a way to make sure it's that intervention piece, right? That
You couldn't
response.
book it as a tutor, like a student can't drop in like they can.
Well, it's also that piece as well, right? So students can drop in. So those that are doubling up would have the opportunity to drop in, like the Writing Center does that portion of the day, of the period, and then the other period, they'll do some other things with teachers sometimes. So it's similar that way. It'll be both. It'll be student directed. If they need help, they can come in and get that help from the interventionist, and the interventionist can push in the class. There'll be members of the math department. We're doing work with them, going to their meetings. They'll also have a specialized skill set that will be helpful for the teachers as well. The Writing Center serves as teachers that are assigned in there. It's one of the courses that they teach, right? So if I'm an English teacher and I teach 5 classes, and one of my periods I'm in the Writing Center, that's one of my 5 classes. So to create a similar model in lots of ways, we need to add the FTE, the position, so that we have the sections to cover. And it's a little tricky. And the reason why we want an interventionist specifically is that our teachers are teaching 5 sections. And if this is going to be open more periods of the day than that, then we have 8 periods in a day. So it would actually be, 1.6 FTE instead of 1.0. And that's where we'll be using math teachers and otherwise to try to fill the
There are
gap.
more kids doubling up on math. You see that?
There were, we used to have about 40 students, give or take, that would double up at the higher levels with calc and stats and whatever. Now we've got about 85 students doubling up, and the other.
It really is a date.
The data emerged from that. And so we, again, because this is how we do things, we ran a pilot this year. We had the good fortune of having a UConn intern working with us in the first half of the year who was trained to be a math teacher. So we decided to use him a little bit differently than we use other interns, had him establish what we're thinking about for the math interventionist work, and students were flocking to him. So we couldn't keep going with the intern model because it's not really how we're supposed to use our interns. But we tested it, it worked. So we know the students will come.
So can there be a math help center like there is for English, where it's staffed by the teachers? Because it sounds like a lot for one person to do, given how many kids struggle in math, not just doubling up. But could it be on the model of the Writing Center where math teachers are manning the help center 1 period a day? Or
so it'll be similar. The interventionist will be there most often. And when that person isn't, it would be a math teacher who's helping out.
So they'd be certified in all, from, geometry all the way up to calculus.
Yeah,
B,
unlike
BC
science,
or
that's how
whatever?
math works. It's 7 through 12, any subject, any level of math, where science is biology versus physics versus chem. They're individualized, but math is a generalized certification to teach anything.
So is there something prohibiting the teachers from doing that without the math interventionalist? Is there?
Just the number of sections. So in order to create this, we need to have those additional sections to get the program started. So because they're teaching all day, they don't have time in their schedule to do this. Because the time they're in that. Pardon?
Even though there's 8 periods and they teach 5.
Right.
What about the 3 periods that they each have?
Well, 5 is a full-time job, right? That's a 1.0 full. So if they were to do more, then they would be additional cost. And then what you're doing is taking them away from other work that they would be doing, whether it's their prep time or meeting with students outside of the class. So a 1.0 position, a full-time position, the high school is teaching 5. If they teach more than that, then we pay additional. If they teach one more class, it's an additional 20% of their salary. So you're really better off bringing in a person in order to build that expertise.
In the English department, they're only teaching 4 out of 5?
So they teach 9 out of 10. I don't know how deep you want to go.
That's okay.
But they do 9 out of 10. And if they're in the writing center, that's for a semester, that's one of their 9.
Okay, I don't understand that math.
I'll chart it out for you.
Do that later. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let me pop in here because I don't want to go too much longer. The self-insured health plan. Can we talk about that a little bit? What do you, just in terms of what do you think the value is in terms of the savings that you're seeing and just overall kind of comments? I'd love just to get a little color on that just for the sake of the public.
Sure. And we did not have the opportunity to get to those questions, that set of questions. So I'm happy to
Bringing you guys
get it to you
back.
prior to next week when we come back, right?
Come back next week, which is
The long and short of it is the plan that we have and the design that we have has saved the district over $10 million in the last 7 years. And we've got some data that would show all of that. And that's through Joe, our consultant, and otherwise. The advantage of being a self-insured plan is that once you have the system established and you've made your decisions around your risk tolerance and your reserves and everything else, you essentially, as you're running as that self-insured, you're an insurance company, essentially, you get to keep the profit that's embedded in there when you have good years that beat your estimates. You also aren't paying margin. So when you're fully insured, what will happen is they'll come up with a cost estimate the same way that we do with ours when you look at our projections based on experience and all of that. And then when you're fully insured, they'll generally tack on a couple of percentage points of margin because they have to turn a profit. Right? That's just how that is. We don't do that. We never build margin in. We look to break even across the board as we're doing it. And I think the easiest example, reference point is the pandemic, right? So when everything shut down on March 11th of 2020 and stayed shut down right through the end of that fiscal year, we saved northward of $2.5 million in our insurance. That above, we underspent based on our enrollment projections. That money stayed with us. Were we fully insured, that money would have stayed with the insurance company, right? So the advantage of being fully insured is and it happens on a cycle. Some years you'll beat it, some years you won't. But when you do, those funds remain with the district, and then you're able to use that to defray future costs because it stays in the internal services fund. And we run that separately and carefully year to year. So I think that when you look to compare, bottom line, when you look to compare a self-insured plan like ours with a fully insured plan, right? What you're comparing against is our actuals, because we run our own thing. We know what our actuals are versus someone else's projection, because you're really only seeing what they paid their insurer. You don't know if the insurer came out ahead or behind in that year. You don't know what their real experience was. The other thing is when you're self-insured, you hold the money, right? So our ISF has the money that we literally pay out of that goes to the doctors, to the pharmacies, wherever it's going to go. The insurance company is your manager. And so you get to use their agreements and their contracts with those service providers, but they don't hold the money. So their cost it's under $1 million, I don't know, 500,000, whatever it is, for that insurance company that you use. But you use them for their book of business because then, again, you get the discounts through Cigna, and they manage complex cases. So we've used Cigna, but it's not an 18 plus or minus $1 million question when you talk about going out to bid or looking at other service providers. You're talking about $500,000, give or take. And the margin on that is slim. You're not, sorry, I'm Italian, I keep hearing it. You're just not talking big dollars in the mix, but you are talking big disruption for the users. So you're really disincentivized when you're self-insured, when you have a good partner who's managing your costs well, to remain with that partner. Because again, they're not holding your money. We're holding the money. We're writing the checks and we're paying those bills.
So with that good partner, as you coined that term, I want to understand that a little bit better. What efforts have been is it annually reviewed being a good partner? I mean, what goes into being a good partner?
We just spent 3 hours with them last week reviewing all of the expenses through last year, looking at trends in the market, looking at opportunities for savings, looking for how can we continue to optimize this program that we have. They're also a good partner because they work with us on a case-by-case basis when there are challenging and complex cases, which do happen. They've also been helpful in returning our prescription rebates. Right? So with Joe Spurgeon, who's our consultant, has worked hard to make sure that 100% of those rebates come back to the district, which is not always the case. and he's worked hard to make sure of that. And that's been a sizable savings. Matter of fact, that offsets the vast majority of the cost of using them as our manager in the first place. So it's things like that, being available, being able to work through challenging cases with our folks, understanding that it's our plan, they're managing it, but ultimately there are times that we need to make that final decision because it's our staff and it's our plan and we're holding the money. So that's what I mean when I say a good partner, and they have an excellent network for our staff. So, you know, the disruption that comes with changing that for, you know, a very, very small change, if it was to be anything, would really have to be carefully weighed.
Yeah,
Is the partner Cigna? Who is the partner? that
We've
you
been with
have?
Cigna for a while.
Cigna. So how many years have you had Cigna as the partner?
During my time, it's been Cigna. So at least 14 that I know of. We've been self-insured for over 20 years.
So have you ever bid out to see if the price could be different with another partner?
Well, I guess the important part on that is the price isn't the number. It's not that 18 million, right?
Right.
It's really, maybe it's 500,000. I know that there have been conversations that it doesn't move a needle based on the disruption that it creates. So I know there have been conversations, we've not formally bid, no.
Can I ask you how often the plan is audited?
Sure. So in our meeting yesterday, you know, they go through but if you mean a third-party audit, we haven't done it since the pandemic. We did prior to the pandemic, we did both a membership audit and a claims audit. Right. And in the membership audit, they said it's not going to cost you anything because we're going to find enough members to offset the cost of this. And they didn't find anything. So we run it very tightly on that end. And on the claims audit, that's where they sample claims for a couple of years and look to make sure. They found one or two delays, but they didn't see it. Again, there was no savings found, no money that was paid or overpaid or what have you. So
This is a third party.
this is a third party that was brought in to perform both of these audits. Yep. Now it was, like I said, it was pre-pandemic, so we might be due, if not next year, maybe in the near future, to do one or both of those again. Don't do them both at the same time, as I recall, unless things have changed. But we're open to that for sure. I think it's.
Who did that analysis?
I'd have to look. I don't remember the name. It was a third party.
Listen, 3 years, we're all like 2 months, like the pandemic. I'm just trying to see if there's somebody that I'd be familiar with.
I'd have to find the report, but
Okay.
they do, public sector insurance audits. Yep.
Can I ask a quick question? I first want to say that, Eric, I think you have incredibly thoughtful questions always, and I didn't think that you were being antagonistic one bit at all. And I so appreciate your thoughts and everything that you say. So I hope that didn't come off as me being argumentative with you either. I respect your opinion and your questions so much. Dr. Lutzy, in the year, and this, I don't know if this is related to the insurance fund, but in the years that the Board of Ed, quote unquote, gives money back, which I know it's not that fungible, but in the years when you come in under budget, let's say, and there's a significant amount, is that from a consistent savings? Or is it variable by year? I understand the COVID years, so let's take those out. But do you find that a lot of your coming in under budget is from insurance? Is it from other things? It would just be helpful to kind of know that, because I think with the self-insurance in particular, I think that's very hard to budget, because you never know when like a catastrophic illness or something, or an accident or something's going to come up. So you sort of have to budget appropriately for those variables. But are there other places that you consistently are finding savings?
So you're right about the insurance, and so that's the risk tolerance question, where we have stop loss and aggregate stop loss, individual stop loss, other things that are sort of reinsurers and whatever. It is variable. We do sometimes, due to turnover, mid-year turnover that wasn't anticipated. Sometimes it's leaves of absences and other things, that we can find some savings in the salary line. sometimes in the operating. Often actually the ISF deposit, the savings that you're seeing that turn back is not from the insurance. So the way we fund the ISF is we take the amount of money that's appropriated for it, divide it by 12 and put that much in each month. And the difference there is because that then stays there, we're able to use it. And if we save, then it just really buys down that future, right? So that savings is from the other 7 objects, not the ISF line. And it generally is, it'd be our largest one, right? So salaries generally has the most puts and takes throughout the course of the year. And so we do find savings in other ways. Sometimes we maybe get a deal on textbooks, we get some savings in the fuel line, the electricity. And of course, sitting here, my friend Bill Tesver, as he's very carefully managing the out of district placement lines, there's been, in the last couple of years, there's been some turn back there too.
Okay, Rita, go ahead.
This is not an insurance question, so I want to make sure people get their insurance questions out. Okay, so this is in regards to, I mean, we've all been hearing about the cuts happening at the federal level. And so my question is, are there any federal or state funding that our schools rely on that could potentially be cut? Do we need to be concerned about not having some sort of shortfall by the end of the year? Do we need to, sock away some money just in case? Like, what is the risk there?
Yes. Not yes to your question, but yes, it's a great question. So the funding is complete for 25, and we're talking about funding in 26, I believe, right? So as you know, Congress did just pass that continuing resolution that completes the appropriations for 2025. And in that appropriation, it provides level funding for most of the key grants that come from Washington to our state and to our district. That's IDEA, which especially there's some questions answered about IDEA in here. Title I, Title IV-A, et cetera. There's one that wasn't included in there with an explanatory statement is what they call it, which is, so usually when a CR is approved, there's an explanatory statement that explains where the funding would go. This one didn't have it. So as a result, the administration has more discretion in our Title II funds. So we do receive about 70,000, give or take, in Title II money. That goes towards staff training and professional development, those things. I gotta believe we're going to be okay. But at $70,000, if that were to go, I think we would just have to talk about it at a future budget conversation. But my hope is that it would be supported because of the importance of it.
So
we're
the
good on
CR
the
guarantee.
on most of the IDEA, the Title I, the others, the larger ones, we're good.
But does the CR guarantee that money? Could that not still be cut?
The CR guarantees those monies. Yes, the IDEA, the Title I, Title IV-A, that's set. And what it doesn't do is the Title II is the only one that's in some jeopardy, which is about $70,000 for us.
What about the special education allocation that Governor Lamont just passed? Are we getting any benefit from that?
So that's an interesting little bit of story for what it's worth. So that $40 million that was approved really right sizes or right funds the excess cost reimbursement grant. So it's not additional funds. It really just makes it whole. They, unfortunately, when they developed the budget, they didn't have the right base number to trend up into this year. So that makes that number whole to try to meet their obligations as they are to districts. So, I mean, long and short of it, we'll get a little, but it's not extra. It was budgeted in the first place because it only just makes it whole. Yeah.
On that, sorry, just when you thought I was going to be quiet. On page 113 of your budget, it shows $3,387,289 total state and federal grants. You mentioned some of those in your responses to the 2 or 3 recent questions, but where's that $3.4 million in the total budget?
So the staffing is gross, but the positions and the things that are funded here are netted out of the budget. Right?
So there's not a line item in the budget up front that shows that $3.4 million. It's spread out
Correct.
along.
Well, so there's only one of these is designed to supplant the budget. The others are meant to supplement, right? So the IDEA is meant to help in the cost of special education programming. So that one is permitted to supplant, meaning we pay salaries out of that one essentially. So we're able to we pay salaries out of that grant and do that. The others are meant to supplement, and they're very specific in the language and the applications that they're not meant to reduce your budget. They're meant to add other programming and other things. So we manage them each that way. And you say the 3 million, but that's a 2-year piece. So most of our grants are 2 years.
Okay.
And so you always have sort of a year that you're using about 50%, and then another 50% that goes ahead to the next year. And it's just the way the grants are designed.
And so your IDEA stuff in there is basically $1.6 million, and there's another $1.5 million of special ed excess cost and educational cost sharing ECS. So you add the IDEA and those other two things, you've got majority, you got about 3 million of that 3.4 million, which is essentially already into the budget. And okay.
Exactly. That's an offset to the budget because we pull staff
right.
into here. And like the Title I here is that 140, that's
Right.
a position that we have this year, but that money's going down, so we won't have that position next year. It's coming out of the budget, or out of the staffing plan, was never in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question about what was reduced from the Board of Finance during that process. It said $160 was removed, I think, from the operational budget.
160,000.
160,000, not 160.
For better.
Sorry. It says expense summary. So I was wondering what that was.
So nothing's finished until the Board of Education sees it again, what have you. But our recommendation is that that money would be turnover. It would be added into the turnover expectation. We've had a few more retirements that have come in. We were worried that not worried, but thought maybe there wouldn't be many retirements this year. We've had a few more we've become aware of. And Social Security changed their calculations for folks that receive pensions in states like Connecticut, where now our teachers, if they have the credits, are now eligible to receive Social Security. So I think that's changing the calculus for a few folks.
Mhm.
And we're anticipating picking up a few more retirements as a result.
Thank you. And then my other question was about the 140,000 coming out of the group insurance.
Yep.
Could you talk about that?
Sure. So we don't, as I mentioned, we haven't gone out to bid on the sort of the manager, the plan manager, the Cigna part, but we do annually go out to bid for our stop loss. So we've got 2 different stop losses, which are essentially reinsurers. We've got one for the individual user. So if any one person in our plan accrues more than $300,000 worth of cost, then whatever that delta is gets picked up by our individual stop loss vendor. And then we also have an aggregate stop loss vendor that if we spend more than 120% of projected claims, then it's covered by this outside vendor. So we go out annually to bid and negotiate the cost of the stop loss because it changes year to year. Some years you might not have any, or we may have only a few people that exceed the $300,000 threshold, which then would bring down your cost, your anticipated cost for the next year's stop loss. So because it fluctuates based on prior year experience, we go out to bid every year on it. And given the experience that we've had thus far this year and some conversations we've had, we anticipate that we reduced the cost for next year in our stop loss because we've been having a decent year and we think that cost will come down. So that's where the 140 comes from.
Okay. So when I look at this thing that was handed out with the new budget, I don't know if it's, it says 4.4%. So that's what we're at now in the increase after the Board of Finance. Right. So we're down to 4.4. So that's a decrease of 0.27%. Right? Just want to clarify that for anyone watching and that, yeah.
Right now, the year-to-year increase is 4.40%.
Right.
Over 25.
Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify that.
The FTEs that are retiring, are you going to be replacing them or is that going to equate a savings in the overall budget?
Well, generally when somebody retires, we're able to, if we do replace them, it's with a lower cost person. And we have done an analysis. It averages around $36,000 per retiree. And that's just, it's an average, but that it seems to be, because we're not generally hiring brand new folks to replace more experience. So there's somewhere in the middle, and not everyone's at the top of the scale that retires. So the average is about a $36,000 savings. But we will look at every position, of course, and make a decision whether or not it's a position that's needed. If, for instance, if there's an elementary teacher that's retiring at a third grade and our numbers are low and aren't materializing, we'll hold on that hiring to ensure that the enrollment necessitates replacing it. So we do it on a case-by-case basis.
Maria, go ahead.
Well, this, something that came up at the, when the Board of Finance was here at our last meeting, and no reflection on, I know you guys run like super tight ship. I know, you know, we know how well everything is done in our district and done so thoughtfully. But I was wondering, have you ever considered, or have we ever done sort of an efficiency audit of the school system, especially with all new different positions in administrators? Is that something the district has ever done since you've been here? I don't remember. I think we did one at the town level.
Trying to doge us.
No,
are we?
no.
A new cane and go.
At this point,
We are in the process of working with the audit committee in the town to develop an internal audit function
Mhm.
that really is primarily, you know, financial as they're looking at things. But that is something that we've done in years past. We've had a good partnership with an external an auditing firm, and we've had them look at everything from the financials around student activities and others to policies and approaches, other things. So we've had good partnerships in the past, and I'm hoping that we'll have good partnership in the future with the group that we're talking about now. You know, as far as looking at the efficiencies and going through, I mean, generally that we have multiple functions that, like the staff utilization reports and others, that do keep us very close to sort of the numbers and the work around that. We certainly are always looking for and learning from best practices and what others are doing across the board. You know, as far as staffing numbers go, sort of administrative staff and otherwise, you'll see in some of the questions and answers that we all pretty much we're pretty comparable based on the structures that we have and the ways. You'll see that by the comparison, Wilton ratios are a little bit different as far as their administrators to students go because of the design of their schools, because they have all students, it's the Princeton model. So all kindergarten students, K 1, 2, are all in the same school, where ours are spread out over 3. So that reduces some headcount in some ways, not others. So some of those decisions do matter. But we've worked with an outside auditor to do some of the work around efficiency and helping us to say go cashless, to get rid of cash at our games and different places, and automate some of those things, and to be more efficient in our cafeterias or otherwise. So we've done some of that work, and I'm anticipating doing more with the internal auditors that are coming on board.
So let's confirm yes or no that you had a billionaire technology person audit.
Yeah. And that's how I like it.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, why don't we call it a night? So we'll touch on capital on 25th, and we'll have some follow-up question, Q&A, and discussion and all that. So good work tonight. I'm just going to leave you all with a point I made last year. You know, there's an unsung hero that's missing from this discussion, and I mentioned it last year. It's the parents in the town, and the direct impact on outcomes because of parents. You know, we certainly spend a lot. We have a lot of headcount and labor, but no one can overemphasize the importance of the parents, both single families. You know, I think the toughest job in the world is a single mother, and we have plenty of them in town. Parents have work, both parents work like I do, and like many of us in this are dead tired when we get home, and that, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and we got to make sure they were doing their homework and all that. And we're all parents up here. So the outcomes of the district, in no small part, are also due to the dedication of the parents in this town. And I want to make sure that never gets lost in this discussion, because we do focus on headcount, and you could see the kind of a little bit of the battle lines being drawn even in tonight. But outcomes are definitely related to the parenting at home. We must never, ever, ever lose sight of that in this discussion about how much money we're dedicating towards the school district. I just want to be very, very clear on that, because I just don't feel that they have no representation in this process. So I'm not saying that no one's crediting them. I'm just saying for the general public, they don't have a voice at this table. And I wanted to make sure that they understand that they have tons of credit they're entitled to get as well.
I do want to share that I've mentioned the 17 meetings we have about the budget as we go through the process. Multiple meetings are held at the schools, with the parents, with the PTCs, the PFA and others. And we do welcome them into the conversation. And you've heard in all of the questions and the answers tonight, we don't talk about just the teachers or just the kids. It's the children, the parents, the staff, and the community, right? It's all of us together. And we are blessed to have an amazing relationship with all the above. Parents
Awesome.
first and foremost.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, everybody. We'll get a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait, what?
So moved.
Very good, everyone. Thank you. We'll
Mike,
see you on
excellent
Tuesday.
point.